go, we're about to get things underway. The TVR rockets away from the rest of the pack and is already going to be leading by, what, 6, 7, maybe 8 car lengths by the time they get up towards Ritchie's corner. So it's not a bad start there. It's not a bad start also from Steve Hodges, who is able to hang on to second place at the wheel of the Lotus 7 Series 2. Now, all of these cars have larger engine capacities. There's nothing in the field other than a Lotus that would be less than 2 litres in reality in this car. And the big thumping V8 all sit in Class V. So any car with a V8 engine sits in Class V. You can see them all treading very gingerly as they work their way through the Wilson hairpin for the first time. Watch out for that red number 9 Lotus Elan off the tail end of the field. Jamie Keevil should make some quick and solid progress in this one. Might not be the most powerful car, but Jamie certainly knows how to pedal a quick car, and we've seen him in previous years have some fantastic results, even here at Snetterton. So up towards the braking area for Agostini go the main pack for the first time in this race. One car that I thought qualified a little bit lower down than I thought it would do, as David Bailey has big contact with the car ahead of him, and I'm afraid we've got a rather damaged TR there, haven't we? Right into the back of Dean Halsey.
Dean Halsey, oh my goodness me, yeah, that's a very sorry looking number 10. A great shame. Dean Halsey just getting going again. Oh, big moment down there at Agostini, but you'd be forgiven for thinking that's the lead of the race that's just gone through. No, that was second, because Mr. Rubin has, well, checked out, I think is the best phrase to use.
Yeah, slight concern there is Dean Halsey's car sitting in the middle of the track at the moment, so let's hope that the marshals or Dean can get it fired up and get it out of harm's way, because if it stays where it ended up at the end of that incident, then it is not going to be in a particularly safe position.
No, it's moving again. I've just looked out the window, just seen it going onto the Bentley straight. Yep, I just noticed that one as well. That's Tim Reed in the 1600 Marcos. That's a great shame. Last saw that car here in 2019, and it's not gone well. Replay here of the moment with Dean Halsey as they all condense up into Agostini. Look, stage right, and oh, so he does. So
something happened there.
Yeah.
That's not a mistake from Dave Bailey, because you'd have to be on the brakes at that point. It just looked as though he wasn't. He was lucky not to cannon into the side of Bill Watt as well. But yeah, Dean Halsey, absolutely innocent there.
Yeah, completely. And that had gone wrong, like you say, very much.
Yeah.
You know, way before they got down to Agostini. Steve Pickering in the Sunbeam Tiger, 4.9 litre V8 snarling away. There's the Camaro Raven Barrow that is making through. Oh, and a spin for the McDonald Frost car, the Triumph TR6, facing the wrong way.
Yeah, that's David McDonald, the car's owner, that had the spin there. So he will recover and will get things going again. Same format as we've just seen in the Swinging 60s Series Group 1 races at 40-minute race. Remember, the pit stop window opens after 10 minutes, stays open for 15, and then closes. And it's a pit stop as quickly as you can do it again. That's what you need to do in this one. As quickly as you can rattle your way through that pit stop is the key to this particular one. It's going to be at least another 7 minutes though before the pit window opens, as the main pack of cars are heading round through Agostini at the moment. But Agostini is not an overtaking option at the moment, because there are waved yellow flags on the way in because of the cars that have, I'm afraid to say, strewn themselves around that part of the circuit at this stage. Malcolm Johnson at the wheel of his little Lotus Europa, who's won races in Group 2 in the past, is doing a good job, isn't he, of hanging on to second place at the moment. He's heading out of Oggies up towards Williams. He's got Steve Hodges with the Lotus 7 ahead of him, but he is under pressure from the TVR that sits behind him at the moment, which is going to be the Jeff Taylor driven car at this stage of the race.
That's a hard beast to keep behind you. And the Lotus Europa, as powerful as it is only a 1.7 engine. Oh, look at Steve Pickering. Have a look on the inside line. That would have been a very big lunge coming into Brundle if he decided to commit to that. Yeah, but Jeff Taylor has got, what's it got, 4.9 litres under his right foot in the gloriously growling Griffith. And then right behind Steve Pickering is Raymond Barrow's Camaro, 5.7 litres. I believe that is the biggest engine in the field, and it makes an absolutely glorious noise as race leaders just come over the line, absolutely miles ahead of the rest. Now, Steve Pickering was one of I say quartet, but it was actually 5 cars involved in the battle for the win at Donington last time out in the Swinging 60s race. And now we see the number 61 draw alongside and ahead of Johnson in the Lotus Europa, well before they get down towards turn 1. But you know that the smaller, lighter Lotus is going to do what it can to regain that spot from the powerful but heavy TVR Griffith.
Yeah, so we'll see as to whether he might be able to, through the twiddly parts of the circuit, try and work his way back through and ahead. The big Camaro, which is Ray Barrow, under pressure from John Wolfe at the wheel of the number 13 TVR Tuscan. I had a quick chat to John earlier on after qualifying, and he did say, wow, that car has now got some serious, serious power. He said the difficulty is now, you just can't drive it. It's got too much power. What they'd almost done was create a toggle switch out of the throttle, I think, and that's been the problem. Here comes Stephen Pickering up the inside of Malcolm Johnson's Lotus Europa. He's snuck his way through, heading in towards Agostini. So the Sunbeam Tiger is now up into 4th position. Down to 5th goes the 1.7 litre Lotus Europa of Malcolm Johnson. After that, it's Ray Barrow fighting away with John Wolfe. The big Chevrolet Camaro fighting away with the 5 litre V8 TVR Tuscan. And all of this whilst Oliver Rubin's just sort of disappearing up the road. We've only completed 2 laps. Lead advantage after 2 laps, 18.5 seconds.
And fastest lap by 9 seconds. Truth alive. Well, I mean, essentially we can ignore the fact that Rubin is out there because we won't see very much of him. We'll certainly hear a beautiful noise that Griffith makes. It growls up to you and screams as it comes past. But look at Steve Hodges in the 43 car. Now he's got to try and fend off the advances of Jeff Taylor in that Griffith. Really getting to grips with that car now. And also Steve Pickering in the number 6 Sunbeam Tiger, doing what he can to hang on to the back of that particular gap. And there goes John Wolfe on the inside line into Coram. Does Malcolm Johnson have a bit of a problem, or does this circuit not suit that car particularly well? I will say that. As Johnson then just decides, you know what, I'm not going to let you have this, as that's the McBride-Doman car. That's the MGC GT facing the wrong way at Nelson. Yeah, so that is Matt Doman that's recovering the car. Mike McBride, a retired doctor, who is scheduled to take over that car. He is the car's owner for part 2 of the race. Now, Oliver Rubin running away in the lead of the race. Up to 2nd now is Jeff Taylor in the TVR, which means last year's race winner of this equivalent race, Steve Hodges, at the wheel of the Lotus 7 Series 2, is now down into 3rd position. Steve Hodges was a dominant winner here last year. We had quite a race of attrition, really. I think we ended up with 7 cars taking the checkered flag last year, but 7 retirements as well on a 14-car field. So it was a bit of a race of attrition last year. But Steve Hodges was a dominant win. It was nearly 56 seconds that he won by last year, whereas at the moment it's looking as though the Rubins are going to be the ones that will have the dominant victory here this year. What we do need to keep an eye on, though, is what's going on for 4th and 5th place, because round through Agostini, the Stephen Pickering as Sunbeam Tiger is trying to attack Steve Hodges' Lotus 7, but equally as much is coming under pressure from Ray Barrow's 5.7 litre Chevrolet Camaro. So up towards Hamilton they will go. That's an area of the circuit you need to keep an eye on. Absolutely. We've just seen the 181 car there. That's Cliff Gray in the Alan S2 GTS, now having a fight with the recovering Mike McBride. Try that again. Mike McBride and Matt Doman car. So, and there's Dean Halsey's. Let's have a look at the back of the car. Well, the back of the car doesn't look too bad considering the thump that it had. I mean, wow, they build them strong. But you know, Dean Halsey, he's been a winner in that car in the past. So he's just, you know, each year he's always striving to get faster and faster, stronger and stronger. And I don't think he would have anticipated that. But although he wants to get stronger as a driver, his car certainly showing a lot of strength, having a whack and just shrugging it off and carrying on. Yeah, Dean Halsey took his first ever swing in 60s win at Anglesey last year. He almost didn't make it here either. He's had terrible problems with the diff and the gearbox in that Datsun, and it was nip and tuck stuff as to whether he'd even make it here this weekend. And even in qualifying, I think there were a few problems because he lapped in qualifying about 6 seconds slower than he was doing in testing here, so things weren't quite right with that car. It's been a difficult weekend for him. Ray Barrow in the great big Camaro, just heading his way out of Murray's. Fantastic soundtrack it makes as it accelerates its way up the Senna straight, shifting up through the gears, looking to try and draw himself up onto terms with Stephen Pickering's Sunbeam Tiger, and I think he's managed to do so on the run in towards Ritchie's corner. So Ray Barrow now up into 4th place at the wheel of the number 97 white Camaro. Stephen Pickering has also lost out to John Wolfe's TVR Tuscan that's gone through. So Stephen Pickering from 4th down to 6th.
And now Ray Barrow will look to try and attack the next little car ahead. Rather diminutive in stature, isn't it, compared to Ray Barrow's car, because the next car is the little Lotus 7 Series 2 of Steve Hodges.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Ray Barrow could actually just open the bonnet and let the Lotus eat.
He could drive over it and only feel like a speed bump.
Absolutely. What I was noticing with the Camaro is it looks so difficult to slow down coming into Murray's. It's a hard enough braking zone anyway, trying to brake for a progressively tightening corner of Coram and then into the opposite direction of Murray's. I come from the sim racing world, and I've been to many a sim racing lap at that very point. And that Camaro just looked, you could feel the nerves of the drivers, like, please slow down, and he obviously managed to do so. But as we see a bit of a wiggle there from Alexander Hewitson.
The difficulty also with the likes of the car of Ray Barrow, it's a very quick car. Ray is a very, very quick driver. He's been very successful in CSCC swinging 60s, but the brakes evolve on a car like that. The brakes that Ray Barrow has got now on lap 4 of the race are not going to be the same brakes as Ray Barrow will have on lights. They'll be very different, rest assured.
Absolutely, but of course the weight of the car doesn't alter. That Austin Healey looks, lively, I think is the best word to use. The tail is dancing all over the place.
Yeah, Alexander Hewitson is driving a Healey like a Healey should be driven, if you ask me. A car that was very successful in sports car racing, hugely successful in rallying as well, was the Austin Healey. And the only way to drive a big Healey is exactly like that. Remember, he is on the Dunlop Historic tyre as well, because we saw him out in the Classic K. So it's a tyre that doesn't give a great deal of grip, but when you've got lots of power, and you've got more power than you've got grip, you get things like that, don't you? A sideways moment coming out of Williams. It's wonderful to watch.
Absolutely it is. It's probably good fun to control and drive as long as the car behaves itself. There is Dean Halsey. Wow, you wouldn't know that he was spun round on the opening lap, as he now chases after Bill Watt, retired airline pilot. As we now cut to the start-finish line, the pit lane now open, and an early visitor is the 331 car's Brian Cohen in his Lotus lap. A short stop for him. He's straight back out onto the field.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see as to who else will get diving for the pit lane. So here's the first taker. Stephen Pickering is in now, so I think the Sunbeam Tiger is in this time through. We've seen a few Sunbeam Alpines racing in Group 1 in the past, but the regular Tiger that we see is that of Stephen Pickering's, who has also claimed overall wins in the past. So pit window is open for everybody. As for the race leader, just to give you an update, you can see that it is a substantive almost 30-second lead now that Oliver Rubin has over the rest of the field. Stephen Pickering is in the pit lane. He is getting out of the car though, and they are lifting the bonnet of it, which suggests that all is not well with the V8 engine machine. There's no obvious signs of anything there, but there are concerned looks from the mechanics who are playing around with.
It must be a brave thing to do, to reach into a burning hot engine with just your bare hands. But I'm going to head to the pit lane and see who I can coerce into having a chat.
Yeah, just bide your time with Stephen Pickering, but there was a shrug of the shoulders from him, which suggests that he's sort of all right with it. He's been around racing long enough, Stephen, to know that sometimes this is what happens. Now they're wiggling the steering wheel. It's as though something isn't quite feeling right on the steering wheel with the car, but it looked as though they were also looking for oil underneath. Now that car will not have power steering because the regulations wouldn't allow it, I'm sure. But yeah, looks are going on whilst that car resides there in the pit lane, but the squabbles going on out on circuit still, because Malcolm Johnson at the wheel of his Lotus Europa is now having a squabble with Andrew Haywood at the wheel of the little Ginetta. Now this will be for position. Malcolm Johnson was 6th at the beginning of the lap, whereas Andrew Haywood was 8th at the beginning of the lap. So what's happened to the number 74 car, Dave Roberts, who should be in between the two? We'll have to wait and see when he comes over the start-finish line as to whether Dave Roberts has overtaken Malcolm Johnson or whether he's fallen back behind Andrew Haywood. Let's have a quick look. The answer is he's overtaken. Right, so yeah, up to 6th goes the car of Dave Roberts. Up to 7th goes Andrew Haywood. And Malcolm Johnson dives to the pit lane at the end of all of that. Now, progress is being made here by number 13, John Wolfe. Now, the white TVR Tuscan heading up towards Palmer, with almost the Martini stripe down the centre of it, is now up into 2nd position. Up to 3rd, therefore, comes the number 61 TVR, which is Jeff Taylor. And fourth now is Steve Hodges, last year's race winner with the Lotus 7 Series 2, whilst Malcolm Johnson finishes off his pit stop down there in the pit lane area. Not the easiest thing to clamber in and out of a Lotus Europa, so it's a slightly longer stop for Malcolm Johnson than others. Seatbelts are done up, and the Lotus Europa makes its way out onto circuit now, whilst work still continues down there in the pit lane with Stephen Pickering's Sunbeam Tiger, I'm afraid to say. Now Steve Hodges, number 43, right on the coattails of the Griffiths 200 of Jeff's Turner, works his way through and past on the exit of Williams, whilst the overall race leader, fantastic noise it makes, this 4.7 litre Oliver Rubin driven TVR Griffith, fantastic soundtrack, and you can see just how early the car gets on the brakes. New fastest lap he's just posted as well, Oliver Rubin on that lap, 2 minutes 9.418, 2 minutes 9.418, that's still 2.5 seconds slower than the pole time that he did. So I think Oliver Rubin, knowing that they had really stamped their authority on pole position, 6.4 seconds quicker than anybody, so they can afford to ease the car off in the race, because they were certainly always going to have the pace. It's whether they've got the reliability, I suppose, is the only question mark that would lie over it, or whether they trip over a back marker in the right place. But yeah, on pure place, you can afford to dial things back a little bit and just have that element of caution. Over the start-finish line, great fight that's going on at the moment, and that is Ray Barrow that has drawn himself alongside and ahead of Steve Hodges, and now Ray Barrow will look to try and attack Jeff Taylor's TVR Griffith, TVR Griffith, yeah, 200 that lies ahead. Ray Barrow nipping around the coattails of the Blackpool-built machine. Loses out, of course, enormously on the brakes heading in towards the Wilson hairpin, so that puts Ray right back under pressure from Steve Hodges at the wheel of the Lotus 7. Should thunder his way back ahead of it as they head up towards Palmer, or is he? No, because Steve Hodges has the inside line, and the little Lotus 7 through Palmer retakes the place away. So Ray Barrow losing out through that part. The twiddly part, the infield section of it, is not really to the suiting of a 5.7 litre Chevrolet Camaro. It's not going to stop Ray Barrow trying, but he's always going to lose out to the lighter and more nimble cars. It's down the big straights where the big American muscle really tells, and he's going to have to wait until the Bentley straight to unleash everything that he can from that number 97 Camaro. So through Hamilton he goes, having lost that position to Steve Hodges up at the Wilson hairpin, and has now fallen the best part of, what, 6-8 car lengths away. But now we're getting to the part of the circuit where Steve Hodges sees the pendulum swing in favour of the car that's behind him. Hodges, though, trying to attack for third position. Jeff Taylor's TVR that still lies ahead. Escaping all of the time up the road is John Wolfe at the wheel of the number 13 TVR Tuscan, as he sits there in third place and heads down in towards Brundle and Nelson on lap number 8. So there goes the Tuscan through Brundle and Nelson, followed by the Griffith, then the Lotus 7, and then Ray Barrow's Chevrolet Camaro. So second, third, fourth, fifth, all not that particularly far away from each other. Out of the right-hander at the bomb hole and up towards Coram. And for Ray Barrow, he's got to dive on the brakes that little bit earlier, heading in towards Coram and Murray's. But after that, the centre straight again should favour the Camaro. But I think he's too far away now to mount a challenge to try and take the place back away. Steve Hodges. As I say, some of it may well be Ray pushing hard on some laps, but having to ease off on others, largely because he might have the brakes underneath him that ideally he needs in the Camaro. In a straight line, no, he does. He draws himself right back up onto terms with Steve Hodges, but he's going to have to get on the brakes because they've got Richie's corner coming up. So he was almost there again, almost there, but he is not going to gain the place. He is having to work his way past the traffic, and that traffic at the moment is Simon Roos, who is at the wheel of his lovely-looking 5-litre Ford Mustang. And Simon is down in 18th position currently, running in 5th place in his class V, of course, because that is a V8 engined machine. All of the V8 engine cars sit in class V. Now, the pit window's been open some time, but we've not had that many takers yet. If you are inside the top 12, with the sole exception of Phil Otley, who is on an outlap, you've not pitted as yet. So anybody that's inside the top 11, all still as yet to pit at this stage, and we've only got 6 minutes of the pit window still open, so the vast majority are looking as though they're going to leave it until the latter stage of this 15-minute pit window now. So 2/3 of it have elapsed already. There's only 1/3 of the pit window left. There's a few cars that aren't circulating anymore. including the cars that got involved in incidents on the first lap, including Stephen Pickering's Sunbeam Tiger, which retired to the pit lane, for which we at some point might get an update from Chris Buxton on, hopefully. But for those that are still out there, there's work to be done. There's back markers to be dealt with as well. In the case of Jeff Taylor, it was the back marker Austin Healy that needed dealing with. That's been dealt with, and we can also deal with whatever's going on down there in the pit lane, because Chris Buxton has got a driver.
I did have a driver, but they literally just jumped into the car. An update on the number 78, which is the blue TR6 we can have here. Bailey Frost, he's just jumped in. First ever motor race, so absolutely fair play. A lovely car to cut your teeth on, I think it's fair to say. Also an update on number 6, Stephen Pickering. Spot on, Mr. Worrell. It was a steering problem that has caused his retirement. Now I'm going to see if we can have a chat with Mr. McDonald, who's just jumped out of the car. David, mind if we have a word? No. We'll give you a second to get your lid off, sir. So as you can see, we've just accosted Mr. McDonald here. So, how's the Triumph behaving itself?
The Triumph behaving itself very well. The driver didn't do too well. Spin on the first lap at the chicane. Much egg on face, but still enjoyable. Yeah.
The others had befallen worse fates, we'll add. So
it's fortunate without contact with anyone, which is good.
And now Bailey, first ever motor race, is out in the car.
He's been coming with me to the races since he was about 14. Good mechanic, and it's just time to give him a bit of reward. And he's got a grin from one ear to the other. Yeah. Grandad's twitching a bit, but he's thoroughly enjoying it. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, thank you very much for your time. Great run. As the newcomer cuts his teeth with the Triumph, it is time to throw back up to Mark Worrell in the commentary box.
Always good to hear from David MacDonald, and yeah, fingers crossed for Bailey Frost for a solid first race. Just yet, don't overdrive it, bring the hard car home, get a signature on your licence, Bailey, is what it's all about in your first few motor races. So you can get that novice cross off the back if you can complete and get signatures in your first 6 races. That's the yellow square with the black diagonal cross through it if you're not familiar with motorsport. That indicates that the driver is a novice. The race leader is in, so Oliver Rubin, having built up a 45-second lead, having also just set the fastest lap of the race on the previous full lap that he did at a 2-minute 8.645, is in the pit lane and handing over to father, which is Nigel Rubin. Nigel, who's been racing historic cars for a few years now, but has also raced single-seaters in the past, including things like Jedi Formula cars as well. And I remember earlier on in his racing career, I'm sure I remember him having a problem with his Jedi here at Snetterton and pushing it over the line and nearly fainting because he'd pushed it uphill to the checkered flag. He wouldn't have counted as a finish, but it's one of those sort of moments that you always sort of recall. I'm sure it was Nigel Rubin, but I've never had the opportunity to ask him about it. More pit stops going on as well, because whilst Nigel Rubin was leading in his TVR Griffith, John Wolfe in the TVR Tuscan, the number 13 car, was in second position, and that has now also dived into the pit lane, as has Ray Barrow as well. Now, the good thing about a great big Chevrolet Camaro is that it's slightly easier to get into and out of because it's a bigger car. So Ray Barrow can sort of take a stride out of the car. He's a big chap anyway, Ray Barrow, in terms of height. Out of the car he's gone, back into it, fires up the engine, and he will rejoin the race. And we'll see as to what happens and who's had the quicker pit stops, because remember, this is as quick as you can do it in this series, so you can gain advantage and time in the pit stop, unlike some of the other series we have where it's a minimum time that you need to spend in the pits. In other words, it's very difficult to gain anything because everybody has to stop for the same amount of time, whereas when it's like this, as quick as you can, you know, you can gain 2, 3, 4 seconds, which out on track is really difficult to gain, but you might be able to gain it in the pit stop if you are well drilled, shall we say. So more pit stops taking place. The Datsun heading back out onto track, which is Dave Roberts, who qualified 5th quickest in the number 74 Dave Roberts driven Datsun. And as he heads back out onto circuit, I think that now means we have only got Steve Hodgetts that hasn't stopped, have we? No, I think Steve, I did see stop, but his car is... Oh, there we go. Steve Hodgetts now showing as having stopped. There's only one car that's showing that it hasn't stopped as yet, and that is Simon Roos at the wheel of the red Ford Mustang. I think other than that, everybody else has now either conducted their pit stops or, in the case of Bill Watt at the wheel of the number 60 Lotus Elan, is still in the process of conducting his pit stop. So Bill's been, again, another long time swinging 60s racer has Bill over the years. Always, I think, in almost the same liveried car as well, the white car with the red stripe down the centre of it. So the door closes on the Lotus. He will work his way back out onto the track with 15 minutes to go. Stalls the car, fires it up again, away it will go. So Bill Watt back out onto circuit, and that pretty much, other than the odd exception, finishes our pit stops. Problems, I'm afraid. That's the Ginetta retiring at the end of the Bentley straight. That was Andrew Haywood who started the car, so Martin Haywood would be behind the wheel of it now, and I'm afraid that we've lost car number 127, the 8th quickest car in qualifying, out of the race with problems right the way at the bottom of the Bentley straight, but I think the car had enough motive power so as to get fully out of harm's way, which was good to see. So the Rubens enjoying a very sizable lead for the race. I think it's the battle for second and third that's going to be the interesting one now, because John Wolfe and Dave Thompson sharing the TVR that's second. John Wolfe quicker than Dave Thompson, I would say. No disrespect to Dave, but I'm sure he'd probably agree with me that John is the quicker of the two drivers. But Dave Thompson now getting caught by Ray Barrow's Chevrolet Camaro, so we'll have to wait and see as to how that pans out at this stage, because I think we might, in a few laps, have a change for second and third place. Those are the two cars that will be heading over the start-finish line very shortly. And as they head over the start-finish line, Chris Buxton is back down there in the pit lane with someone else to chat to.
I've been waiting for a chance to chat to the one of the pilots of the almighty number 47. I've got Ollie Rubin here.
Hi, mate.
Very glad to get hold of you. Now, you said to me just before we went on air that those were old tyres on the car.
Yeah, we've run those tyres for a couple of races, and they're getting a bit long in the tooth now. A bit more slidey.
More slidey, and you were still 9 seconds quicker at the beginning. Absolutely unreal.
Yeah, well, we've got a massive pace advantage. We've got a lot of power, and yeah, it's just a fantastic car. And me and my dad have worked really hard to get the car to what it is now, and yeah, it's going really well.
Evidently, yes. So how often will we see it throughout the year?
We're hoping to do more racing this year, but it's all dependent on customers, because we run these for a living, and they come first, unfortunately. But we'll see. Get out as much as we can.
Excellent. We very much hope that we get to enjoy the number 47 a lot more. Thank you very much, Ollie Rubin. He's just as quick in the sim racing world, I can promise you that, because I have commentated on him in there. Back up to you, Mark, in the commentary box.
Yeah, the perennial problem, isn't it, when you're a racing driver, but you're also a car preparer as well. The customers have to take priority, and as frustrating as that can be, that's what you've got to do, because it's the business that allows you to have the money to go racing in the first place. And if you're not keeping the customers busy, you haven't got a business. Or keeping the customers happy, you don't have a business. So Nigel Rubin behind the wheel of that car now. He's just sort of settling into his stint, but of course all of the hard work having been done by Ollie Rubin has built up quite a sizable gap between themselves and the rest of the runners. The Dave Thompson-Ray Barrow battle for second and third place, I think, has resolved itself in favour of the Chevrolet Camaro on this lap. Whilst we were busy chatting to Oliver Rubin, I think over the start-finish line any second we'll see the Chevrolet Camaro come through. Yep, in second position. Here it comes up towards the start-finish line now. Down to third with its lights on is the TVR Tuscan, so I did call that one as likely to happen, and indeed it has. That lap was about 4 seconds quicker from Ray Barrow relative to Dave Thompson's lap. Fourth place, some way off the lead now, is going to be the little Lotus 7 Series 2 of Steve Hodges, who was more than holding his own in the early stages of the race, last year's race winner, but he seems to have dropped away a little bit now, and actually might possibly have fallen further adrift. Where is he at the moment? I thought he would have come over the start-finish line by now, but it would appear that no, he is still as yet to appear into sight. So Steve Hodges has dropped a long way adrift of the cars that he was doing battle with in the early stages of this one. Malcolm Johnson is still at the sharp end of the race as well, at the wheel of his little Lotus Europa. And Dave Roberts at the wheel of the number 74 Datsun is at the sharp end. The one car we haven't really mentioned a great deal of, but I did say at the very beginning of this race, watch out for Jamie Keevil, arguably one of the quicker drivers in the field, but having had problems in qualifying, that meant that he only did one lap and therefore had to start off the tail end of the field. Well, Jamie Keevil is now up into 7th position at the wheel of the number 9 Lotus Elan, and is still lapping quicker than everybody ahead of him, and that includes race leader actually. So Jamie Keevil, 2 minutes 11.0 that time through. It's a 2 minutes 11.8 from the race leader. And in the background, Dave Thompson's retired the TVR Tuscan by the look of things. Part the way down the Bentley Straight, it looks as though the TVR Tuscan has headed into retirement. It'd be going so well in the hands of John Wolfe. Not sure what the problem is, but almost underneath the vehicle bridge is where the number 13 TVR has pulled to the right-hand side of the circuit, and out of the car in his brand new race overalls for this season, that's the budget gone, is Dave Thompson, who has pulled the car up right at the marshal's post as well. So if there were any issues that need dealing with, they'll have dealt with it, but it just looks like a pure mechanical issue for that car, which is such a shame because they don't seem to have had a great deal of luck with that TVR over the course of the last season or so, really. It's been a rather frustrating car, I would imagine, to deal with. So that's another one of the front runners out of the race. What it now does is promote last year's race winner, Steve Hodges, up into the podium spots, and the number 97 Chevrolet Camaro, which slides its way round and out of Ritchie's, that is now safely, more than safely, in 2nd place. So 9 minutes of the race to go. Our race leader was just heading on to the top of the Bentley Straight. In towards the conclusion of the lap comes Mike McBride's MG CGT, followed by the Porsche that we saw out earlier on in the hands of Stephen Osborne in the Classic K race. I'm amazed that Dean Halsey's Datsun is still going as well. Car number 240 just heading round through Murray's now as well, considering that was facing the wrong way, and I thought it would have a huge amount of rear damage, having been accosted by whatever happened to David Bailey, who just didn't seem to brake when they got to Agostini. But Dean Halsey, the car looks pretty much untouched, which I find absolutely amazing, if I'm honest. So, if you're watching the stream, apologies that some of the shots aren't quite as we would wish at the moment. I think there might be a few technical issues with some of the cameras at the various points around the circuit, so we will be working on those, rest assured, if you're watching the stream, to try and ensure that we have all of the camera angles available to us for the remainder of this race, and of course the Morgan Motor Company Challenge that will be coming up very shortly. The clock continuing to tick, 8 minutes still remaining, and Nigel Rubin looking very comfortable in the lead of the race. Oh, another car that we've lost as well, I'm afraid to say, is Bill Watt. So we had a bit of a race of attrition last year. Well, it's turning into a bit of a race of attrition now, because the car that was running inside the top 12 is out of the race. It's come out of Brundle and Nelson and has sort of faltered rather. So again, there's a very convenient gap in the barriers, which is allowing the marshals to get that car well and truly out of harm's way, which is good to see. Now, what we're watching at, if you're watching the stream at the moment, is just heading through Oggies, is Mike McBride in 17th place, fighting away with the Porsche of Stephen Osborne, who is in 18th position. And getting past both of them is Dean Halsey at the wheel of the Datsun, who is running in 8th place currently. So considering he was, say, pointing in the wrong direction, looked as though he was heading into retirement on lap number 1, 8th place for Dean Halsey. That's not a bad drive whatsoever. So Dean will be hoping that the remainder of his 2022 season goes without any issues. So 6 3/4 minutes to go, and a very comfortable 60-second lead for Nigel Rubin. Most of that hard work was done in the early stages. When you push like Oliver Rubin did at the beginning of the race and pull out 18 seconds after just 2 laps of racing, what was it, 18 and a half, if memory serves me correctly, after nearly 19 seconds after 2 laps, and the hard work's done at the very beginning, and you would never guess, such is the pace, that that car is running on well, as they said, old tyres. Well, it's only done 2 races, but I would imagine you drive that TVR, and the fact there's a lot of power going through the 4.7 litre engine, yeah, you're going to chew those tyres up quite quickly there. So yeah, they might only be 2 races old, but they'll have endured a lot of punishment. And therefore it begs the question, have they bolted a new set of boots on that car today? Exactly how much even quicker would it have gone? Because it has almost been in a class of its own, really, throughout the course of this particular race. So Nigel Rubin leading the way. Ray Barrow, number 97, in 2nd place. Stephen Hodges is 5 seconds adrift of Ray Barrow in 3rd place, but is closing in, so that's one to keep an eye towards. Malcolm Johnson is in 4th position at the wheel of the number 149 Lotus, so he will be watching his mirrors, because not that far behind him is a red Lotus Elan, and that is Jamie Keevil, who's now up into 5th, remembering having come from 25th on the grid as it was issued originally after qualifying. So watch out for that. Just coming up towards Murray's now. There's a bit of traffic Jamie Keevil needs to deal with, which is car number 181, which is Cliff Gray's little Lotus Elan. So Jamie very effortlessly works his way through and past that. Over the start-finish line goes Malcolm Johnson. Jamie Keevil right behind him as they head up towards Ritchie's corner. He's not going to be close enough to sneak his way through with 4.5 minutes to go as they head towards Ritchie's. But he might be able to do something on the exit of the corner, because he is now right up onto terms with Malcolm Johnson, who is looking to go a little bit defensive on the run in towards Wilson, is he? Now, Jamie Keevil is still too far away, so Malcolm sweeps the Lotus Europa through the normal racing line, heading into and out of the hairpin. And as they now start to head uphill towards the left-hander at Palmer, brake lights come on the 2 Lotus cars at almost the identical point on the circuit. From there, it's the short straight that brings them in towards the braking area for Agostini. And is Jamie Keevil close enough here? He is showing the nose of the car to Malcolm Johnson. He's diving up the inside as the nose of his car dips that little bit further than Malcolm Johnson, suggesting that he's putting a bit more pressure through the brake pedal. As a wiggle midway through the corner as he corrects the mid-corner oversteer. But job is done for Jamie Keevil. The number 9 Lotus is now up to what will be 4th position off the back of the grid. So a fantastic drive from Jamie Keevil. What does Jamie Keevil need to do to catch the next car? The next car is about 16 seconds up the road, which is Steve Hodgetts, who is lapping about 3 seconds slower than Jamie Keevil. But Steve Hodgetts has got his own task that he's trying to deal with at the moment, and that is trying to get the number 43 Lotus 7 Series 2 up onto terms with Ray Barrow. Now, that Lotus 7 Series 2 might be getting caught by Jamie Keevil, but Steve Hodges is catching to the tune of about 2 seconds a lap, the car ahead of him, which is Ray Barrow, who seems to have sort of gone off the boil a little bit. Not surprising, because as I mentioned earlier on, that the brakes that Ray Barrow will have on the Chevrolet at the end of this race will be nothing like the brakes that he had at the beginning with the big 5.7 litre big muscle car. So those 2 cars heading up and towards Ritchie's corner, whilst Jamie Keevil is just exiting Murray's at the moment at the wheel of the number 9 Lotus. So battle for 2nd and 3rd forming, battle for 4th and 5th sort of dispersing to a degree. And even though Malcolm Johnson lost a place on that lap to Jamie Keevil, Malcolm still set his best individual lap of the race so far, so going to show that he was pushing really hard to try and hang on to the place, and then despite having lost it, still then kept pushing. So intriguing to see that one. So a couple of minutes to go is all we have. Nigel Rubin will be heading on to the last lap of the race before too much longer, and the gap has extended to 62 seconds now from 1st to 2nd place. It'll be interesting to see what's happening to the gap from 2nd to 3rd place, because Ray Barrow is coming under ever more pressure from Steve Hodges, and wouldn't surprise me if before too much longer he takes the place away. He's going to have a very good go, I think, as they head up towards Oggies. And I think that might be where we see a change potentially for 2nd position. Steve Hodges, I think, is through. We're not going to get the camera shots from that part of the circuit currently. Apologies again for a few technical difficulties if you're watching the stream, but I think we've had the shuffle in the order for 2nd and 3rd position, as through goes Nigel Rubin onto what will now be the last lap of the race. So out of Ritchie's, taking things nice and steady now, Nigel Rubin. You can tell just the body language of the car, meaning that they've done the hard work. You still drive the car reasonably quickly, but you're on the throttle that little bit later. You are on the brakes that little bit earlier. You're changing gear, you know, a few hundred revs lower as well, just to look after everything as you are going to stroke the car home for still a dominant victory. It's going to be over 60 seconds that the car is going to win by in the end, as the squabble for second and third, well, it had changed. Ray Barrow had lost out to Steve Hodgetts as they exited the infield section of the circuit, but of course then the Bentley Straight came up and Ray Barrow was able to wrestle his way back through and ahead of the Lotus 7 Series. They head out of Murray's and over the start-finish line. Ray Barrow being urged on from the pit wall to cling on to second position. Of course, he extends that lead advantage, or that advantage between himself and the car in third place, heading up towards Ritchie's corner. But the pair of them excel at entirely different parts of the circuits. For the big American muscle car, it's the straights that he has the advantage. It's all the twiddly parts, and there's plenty of those at Snetterton on the infield 300 circuit that favour Steve Hodges. So it'd be intriguing to see as to exactly what Ray Barrow might be able to do. But for the Rubens, they are into the final sector of the lap. They are very shortly about to make their way up towards what will be the checkered flag, whilst this battle for second and third has still got what the best part of 3/4 of a lap to try and sort itself out. And now, of course, Ray Barrow is onto the infield section of the 300, round through Agostini and up towards Hamilton. That's where Steve Hodges has the opportunity to try and close himself right up onto the coattails of the Chevrolet Camaro once more. And he's looking to try and do that as they head up towards the braking area for Oggies. Checkered flag is ready. Through and over the start-finish line comes Nigel Rubin to take the checkered flag. The hard work having been done by Ollie Rubin in the early stages of the race. So that's the race winner over the start-finish line. Back to what's going on for second and third place. Still with a bit of traffic to deal with this time as they head on to the top of the Bentley Straight. Steve Hodgetts has made it through and ahead of Ray Barrow through the twiddly parts. But now we're on the Bentley Straight and Ray Barrow rockets his way right back past the little Lotus 7 Series 2 again and picks back up second position. So Steve Hodges is going to have to try and do something else. Round through Brundle and Nelson, all he can do is close up onto the back of the Chevrolet Camaro. He will be able to carry a bit more speed as they go through the very fast and daunting bomb hole, and in particular Coram, which is a corner which, if you've got a good handling car, really favours you, but he's just too far away, Steve Hodges, and I think, yeah, he's backed things off, I think, in this final couple of corners. So it is going to be Ray Barrow who is going to come through and finish in second position by the look of things. Onto the brakes, through the left-hander. In fact, Steve Hodges has lost a further position because Jamie Keevil has caught him. There's been a problem for Steve Hodges on the final lap. Ray Barrow, number 97, will finish in second position, and Jamie Keevil, off the back of the grid, is going to come through and finish in third position in this race. Quite what happened to Steve Hodges, I don't know, but even now, is it fuel? He is limping towards the flag. He's going to lose out another place because Malcolm Johnson is going to pip him as they come over the start-finish line as well. Through goes the yellow Lotus Europa, and Steve Hodges trickles his way towards the checkered flag with the engine, I don't think, working whatsoever. So Steve Hodges does take the checkered flag, but what was looking as though it could be second position ultimately ended up as sixth position because he also lost out to the Datsun 240Z of Dave Roberts on the charge to the flag as well. So frustration for Steve Hodges, last year's race winner, destined for certainly a podium, possibly the second step of the podium, but ultimately finishes outside of the top 60. You know, he finished in fifth place in the end. He did finish in fifth position. Dave Roberts did not quite pip him on the run to the flag on corrected times. So a few more cars to work their way over the start-finish line, and then I think that is everybody now that has taken the checkered flag in this Adams and Page Swinging 60s Group 2 race, which again, we did have a reasonably high rate of attrition in the end. A few mechanical failures, a bit of an incident at the beginning, but a dominant win in the end as it was for the pole-sitting car of Ollie and Nigel Rubin, who will, I'm sure, very shortly be chatting to Chris Buxton. Confirmation of the results then, it's a win for father and son, Ollie and Nigel Rubin, with Ray Barrow finishing in second place, and Jamie Keevil, after problems in qualifying, from the back of the grid to third and wins his class. Malcolm Johnson finishes in fourth place, with Steve Hodges trickling his way over the start-finish line to finish in fifth place. Dave Roberts finishes in sixth but takes the class win from Dean Halsey, who was facing the wrong way and went to last in seventh place at the end of this race. It is going to be Phil Otley who finishes in 8th place, with John Crayson in 9th place, and completing the top 10 it is car number 61 that completes the top 10, which was Jeff Taylor and Will Bryan. The Frost & MacDonald Triumph finishes there in 11th place, with the number 31 car of Alexander Hewitts and the Austin Healey in 12th place. Cliff Gray was 13th, ahead of Mike McBride and Matt Doman, who finished in 14th place. Problems for Stephen Pickering, problems for David Bailey, problems also on the first lap of the race for the Marcos as well, all of whom were retirements in that race for the Adams and Page Swinging 60s. So as they clear the circuit and our race winners head down towards Parc Ferme, Chris Buxton will be ready to chat to them in just a few moments' time, and we will get ourselves ready for what will be the final race of the day here at Snetterton. Another 20-minute race for the Morgan Motor Company Challenge will be our next race. So before we get to the Morgans, let's hand you downstairs to Chris Buxton.
Here in the winner's circle, we have some fantastic machinery, and I think it's fair to say they've done absolutely brilliantly well. It was a fairly foregone conclusion who was going to be on the top spot. It was, of course, number 47. You've had your go behind the microphone. Right, so we spoke to Ruben Jr. Let's have a chat to Nigel. What an incredible car, what an incredible performance.
Yeah, it's a beast, isn't it? The old TVR, yeah, speaks. His name says it all. Fantastic.
Absolutely, and did it ever put a foot wrong? I mean, 6 seconds a lap quicker than everybody else right at the beginning. Was it just make sure it came home? Was there anything you were worried about at all?
No, not really. I think in this game, if you don't go full steam, you're not doing the job properly.
We enjoy it more when you do, let's be honest. Yes, and will we see you through the year?
Oh yes, most definitely. Unfortunately, we're reserve at the moment for Thruxton, but Thruxton's a seriously fast circuit, so really looking forward to getting there. So I hope we do.
I remember seeing this car very sideways at Thruxton last year. Thank you very much, Nigel and Ollie Rubin, the winners of the Adams and Page Swinging 60s Group 2 race. Where will we find Raymond Barrow for the number 97? Oh, he's over there. I'm wandering the wrong way. What a car, and a great drive for second position.
Well, we qualified poorly, so I'm very happy with the position we've ended up. Had a really good dice with the Lotus 7 towards the end there. Ended up getting really untidy, I'm afraid, but I think he had a mechanical failure at the very end, but I think I just about had him covered. But very good race, very good race.
I mean, you really must have felt the pressure, because it was lap after lap after lap that you and Steve Hodges were just fighting over the same bit. You'd pull away in the straights, he'd have you in the corners. Were you worried at all? Were you thinking he was going to have you, or were you confident you could get him at the end?
Oh, I was definitely aware that he could drive past me at any second, because although this car has the power, he had the nimble chassis that he could, even if I was defending, drive round the outside me, so that he was a real danger up to the very end. But a very satisfying race.
And will we get to enjoy your car again later this year?
Oh yeah, I plan to do most of the Swinging 60s races, so hopefully it's gone according to plan, because my plan was don't win the first race and then you don't have the 30-second penalty, so it's
Indeed.
Exactly to plan.
Exactly. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Barrow, and such a magnificent stallion that you have. And finally, in third position, unbelievable drive from the back of the field, Jamie Keevil. I mean, we've enjoyed your number 9 here in various meetings. I seem to remember you had a bit of a moment where a diff snapped and
the wheel fell off and it nearly rolled over, so that was one thing.
But from last to third.
Not bad, yeah. Well, it's all in the car, I guess. Yeah, we had a strange electrical gremlin in the morning, which meant I did about a lap and a half. So, first few laps were just trying to get into the swing of the car and get the rust off of things. So, yeah, we seemed to fix the ignition issue, and it went like the clappers. So, car drove beautifully. Great race, slapping everyone. So, it was really good fun. Enjoyed it a lot.
I can see with a smile you thoroughly enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
And will we be seeing you throughout the year?
We will do, yes. Reliability pending, but yes, we seem to have fixed our issues now, so yeah, we're looking forward to Thruxton in 2-3 weeks in Thruxton.
Indeed.
So that should be good.
Thank you very much for your time. Jamie Keevil, third place in the mighty number 9. And for the final race of the opening round of the Classic Sports Car Club here at Snetterton, it's the Morgan Motor Company Challenge. They'll be leaving the paddock shortly. Back up to you, Mark Werrell, in the commentary box.